So, welcome, Team Joanna. We are going to do another Q&A with Joanna, and we are calling this Q&A Tuesdays. So, our goal is to release a Q&A every other Tuesday. So, if you haven't heard our first Q&A recording, please head over to the announcements section and check that out. That was published a couple of weeks ago, I believe. This Q&A is going to be in a slightly different format. So we're going to see how it works, see what you guys think about it, and please make sure you let us know how, if you like this format as opposed to the format that we did a couple of weeks ago. So Joanna.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, and lovely to have you here again. So Cindy Mossgrove is asking, what is the single most important thing we should know, do, or see right now?
The moment I tune into this question, I hear tune in to what your truth is in the moment. Because relative to what your truth is in the moment, so depending on what your truth is in the moment, you can decide the next steps accordingly. If we are not aware of our truth, it will be difficult to action and intent. Interesting. Does that make sense to you and I, Wendy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was just like, it just came out. So when I say it came out, just for the listeners, sometimes I am more aware of what I'm going to say. There are times where I have no knowing of what will come out of my mouth until the moment that I speak it. And for me, it's a very tricky situation because I am still learning how to trust this enormous energy and to let go of the reins. So for those of you who are learning how to channel, and I bet you that's one of the questions, who are learning about your psychic abilities, please understand that you are in essence part of a relationship. And just like any good old relationship, in order to be strong and successful, it has to have an element of deep trust. Oh, that's a big one. And knowing our truth helps with that. So that's the answer. It's to know what your truth is.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think, so this is probably kind of going maybe a little bit deeper in a similar vein. So Emma James is asking, how does stepping into one's true spiritual power as a human look, and how does it feel?
The very thing that comes to me is an answer that will not be very satisfying. And that's because there is no such thing supposed to. Everybody will have a different idea of what that means. But essentially, it's a feeling. And it will be slightly different variations of certain feelings for different people at different times. And as I'm channeling this information, I have this an anxiety at the top of my chest, and I'm going, what's that about? And the reason why I feel this is because it's hard to identify it. It's hard for me to contain it. And because it is not contained, it feels like I'm not in control of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I'm feeling it too. So I think that's very interesting.
And so if you feel it now around your shoulders, and those of you who are listening will pick up on this if you're sensitive. If you're not picking up, it doesn't mean you're not sensitive. It's just some people will pick up certain frequencies than other times. Other people will pick up different frequencies. So the original question still remains, what is it supposed to feel like, or what is that like, correct? That's the question.
Yes.
Well, the answer depends on what you believe it is supposed to be for you. See, if you go by what is it supposed to look like, you're going by somebody else's explanation or interpretation of it that does not make it your experience. For example, if Joanna says being spiritually connected means this, this, and that, if you feel a whole bunch of other amazing things, but this, and that you don't resonate with, does that mean you are not being spiritually connected? Not at all. It just means my way of interpreting what this means to me happens to be in this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, it's going to be, it's an individual, it's truly original to the person. It's your own experience of it.
It's everybody's unique journey. You got it. And the reason why the answer may feel very frustrating is because you can't contain it. And when you can't contain something, you can't give it a label. But the moment you give anything a label, it is what the label says.
Mm.
You understand?
Right.
I love this answer. I just love it. This is
Emma might not be so happy with it, but
I believe she will, because it will take her back to her own sense of empowerment. It will take her back to perhaps asking herself, never mind what it's supposed to look like. If I had it my way, what would I choose to experience as my connection? Right?
Yep.
So it's driven more by one's choices versus what it's supposed to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's very self-focused versus outside focused. When we're asking, what is this supposed to look like? We are not asking ourselves the question, what is it supposed to feel like? What does it feel like to me? We are looking for somebody else's interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm saying this, I part of me, it's the Joanna part, realizes it's a very philosophical answer and question. But then I am being reminded that there is very little black and white. It is usually everything in between.
Right.
And everybody will have their own little in between. Right? Black and white. Well, black and white means if I am in black, the white must be wrong, or there is an opposition. Right? We're looking for inclusivity. So, but I think this might help.
So we're living in the gray, is what you're saying.
If you were to imagine, how much of your life do you live in certainty in black and white? Well, I mean, really knowing exactly what's going to go down, when, and how.
This is true.
That's because the only real control you have is over how you show up in life. You may have control over your kids, but at the end of the day, you really don't. You really don't. You've just built up a mechanism between you and your kids where there is trust and all these different things. And you think you have control, but at any given moment, your kid could say to you, no, thank you. Correct? And there's nothing you can do about it aside from physically restraining, but we're not talking about that.
Right.
Point is, we've learned to trust things because we've done them so many times, we don't question it anymore. Right? You have no control over what's going to happen tomorrow. Do you worry about it?
Nope.
Well, maybe these days people do, but generally when you wake up every morning, is one of your first thoughts a worry? If it is, you and I need to talk. You and I need to examine what's running your life, because if that is the first thing, that you think of on regular basis, I don't mean in moments of difficulties, but on regular basis, we need to look at the underlying causes of all those thoughts, because there is no peace in that. Right. So, and I shouldn't say there's no peace. The focus is on everything other than peace. Right.
Yep.
Because peace and everything else, as a matter of fact, is experienced where? Inside or outside of you?
Inside.
Yeah, everything is always inside. Right.
So this dovetails kind of beautifully into the next question. So Robin Burnett Kleizub please forgive me, you guys, if I'm not pronouncing your names properly. I'm trying. Robin Burnett Kreiseb. So is it odd that during this time of chaos and uncertainty, I feel more at peace than possibly I ever have? Everyone's running around panicked and concerned, which is completely understandable, but I am here just chilling and taking it all as it comes. I'm also a frontline worker. My sense of calm seems to stem from an idea that I believe there will be much change in the world for the good.
So when the question is, isn't it odd? Clearly it's not. And if it is, you're totally okay with it.
True.
And again, going back to the first question, I am being asked to define what's odd, what isn't. It's not up to me. Odd or not is irrelevant. What's important is that you, Robin, yes?
Yes.
Have found a way to look at it from a perspective that allows you to still, despite of all the chaos going on, connect to your own internal peace and whatever that gives you. Whatever belief you hold dear to your heart is the belief that gives you that. Is that odd? I would say that's the preferred way to be. So whether it's odd or not, it's not up to me to define. That's up to you. And number one. Number two, why would you even want to? Clearly it serves you, right?
It's very high vibrational.
Whoa, it's very deep. And this is a soul that at the very depth of who she is knows the basics of existence itself. This is a very deeply connected soul. Doesn't mean the soul doesn't have a human experience. I'm sure she gets pissed off here and there and throws curses, not curses, but like, fun words, let's put it that way. But there is this deeper layer of understanding with this person that this person just knows. They can't explain it. They even think to themselves, God, shouldn't I be panicking? Yet the answer is no. Right?
Exactly.
So I would say to Robin is hold on to that as much as you can.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure.
And at the same time, when you do have a moment of doubt, because it's normal human behavior, go, that's interesting. I wonder where that comes from. What belief must I have in order to have this thought? Because I feel this person is clearly looking at life from a removed almost view where she can observe it. So it's like she sees herself in the chaos and she sees herself as being part of it, but she, for the most part, is not identifying with it. To me, that's a skill.
Lovely.
I almost want to say, you should teach how to do that. And then I'm going, yes, wouldn't that be wonderful? Except you can do all the teachings in the world. It's something that has to happen within you and no one can deliver it. It's a space of going back to what is your truth. Her deep truth is that there is something beyond what we can see. And she chooses not to focus on what is many people's current reality. She chooses to accept what is. It's part of her reality, but she's not making it be her reality.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I said to me, that's a skill. As Joanna, to me, that's a skill.
Yeah, and for me, it's a decision I make every morning, before I actually even get out of bed, to not give into the fear and the chaos and everything that's going around. And it's not to say that I don't have moments of, icky, but to bring myself back to, I choose not to, or I choose to live my life in this way.
Yeah. Or you choose to look at it from a different perspective. You may not have a choice how you live your life at this moment. Well, you always have some choice, right? But you may not be able to remove things that are in your reality and put something else in its place. That may be out of your control. But you absolutely have a way of relating to it differently if you choose to.
True.
It's the principle of glass half full versus glass half empty. Everybody in the world has heard that, I'm sure.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So I hope that helps with that one.
So next question is a question that a number of people have asked. So how does someone figure out their life purpose?
So what I'm hearing is your purpose is not what you do. Your purpose is who you are. So the question might want to be to this person, who am I? And or who do I choose to be? If who you are right now is not who you choose to be, then you have to choose a different direction. But in order to know who you are right now, you have to again know your truth. So the answer to that question is know your truth. What is your truth? One of the ways that one can, how do I say, I don't want to say the word determine, because it's not, when we talk about what's my purpose, it's like we come here, we have this script that we have to fulfill, and it's like if we go off track, we get punished. It's not like that. From what I feel and what I believe, we have a general idea of what it is that we want to accomplish in this life, right? For example, in my experience, in my situation, on some level, somewhere out there, I chose to experience giving information that will ultimately be helpful to people. Some call it teacher, some call it guidance, some call it medium, some call it whatever, right? Mm. And if you asked me that 20 years ago, I would never have said to you that I was a teacher. That's because I didn't have the belief in me to even consider being worthy of being a teacher. Who am I to say what? And never mind, people listen, right? Mm. But one of the ways to help one connect the dots is to look at life while growing up, or to look, from the rear view window, look at your life you have lived up until now and notice what is the main theme that always has caused one difficulty. Okay. So for example, with me in particular, I felt that I wasn't loved and I didn't feel worthy. So in a roundabout way, I chose on some level to grow through it and then use the tools I gained through my growth to help others not to suffer as much of the same thing. However, I could do it in gazillion different ways. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So someone can create that by being a hairdresser. When you do somebody's hair, people have conversations. So like, the old days in a bar and you would be the counselor. I happen to do it through mediumship. It's not, so that's why I'm saying it's not defined by what you do. It's defined by who you are, right? Mm. So one's purpose is not so much what you do, although who you are, there's usually something that follows that you do, right? Like I am, let's say, a teacher, and as a result of being a teacher, I do this and I do sessions and I do healing, and do you understand, right? Yep. Like there is a certain level of doing, but the type of quote unquote job or label you put on the doing is not what your purpose is, not the purpose. The purpose is, why do you do it? What's behind it? What's driving it? What desire is driving this? Right? Mm-hmm. Here's an example for everyone. If you were to look back at your childhood growing up from a removed perspective, and if there was one thing that you could have had or wanted to have as growing up but didn't, what would it be? Right? For me personally, is not feeling loved and not feeling worthy. Right? Mm-hmm. What is it that I ultimately teach? Right. How to own one's value. Mm-hmm. Right? That is ultimately that's like my drug of choice, to be honest with you. It gives me a high.
Hmm.
And I know not everybody is able to feel that high with what they do, and I don't feel it all the time. But there are moments where I feel relatively high when I am talking to a person and I can see it, even though I don't see them physically. I can see and feel their energy literally unfolding in front of me. It is something that is absolutely indescribable in terms of beauty. So I happen to do it in this way, right?
Right.
Our purpose, I believe, is to give of ourselves, not to give ourselves away, but to give of ourselves. Because the moment we give ourselves away, there is nothing to give. Interesting, right?
Yep.
And I feel like I'm tapping into people who give of themselves a lot, to the point where they give themselves away and they wonder, where did I go wrong? Because they lost the perspective of what's important to them, or they lost, maybe not perspective, they lost themselves in whatever it is that they were trying to create, not realizing that it is for themselves that they were creating it in the first place. I hope it's making sense logically, because I'm not in my logic right now very much.
No, it does. It does make sense. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's
because I feel like
lots of stuff firing in my brain right now.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm really digging deeper here. But my fascination is to offer deep information like that. That's, again, my drug of choice. Okay. Does that help to answer that question?
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's not a straight answer, and it will be different for everybody, obviously. But if you think about it from the context of, we are here to live, we are here to give of ourselves. So we either give of ourselves, we don't give of ourselves. Those are two extremes. But generally, people don't live in extremes. It's usually somewhere in the middle. It's, again, the gray area, right?
Right.
And what gets us excited? Like, example, when I give, it makes me feel literally high. And again, not everybody can experience that. But what makes you feel joy? Well, makes you feel joy, let's say, when you help an animal. Okay, does that mean that you have to quit your job and live in a and go and work in a shelter? No. But to find a way to satisfy that need and desire will greatly enhance one's life. What we're here to do is not necessarily defined by what we do for the biggest part of our life in terms of work. And as I'm saying this, I'm going, that's an interesting perspective. Never thought about it that way, right? And I feel that's when we get lost a lot. Mine happens to be that I was redirected to do this as a way of literally living a life. This is how I support my needs. But I guess in spirit, I could have chosen any other time. This just happens to have this quote unquote spiritual component connected. And the moment there's a word spiritual, people get weird. What I'm doing is I'm offering guidance. And I don't know where rephrase. It's not that I don't know where this guidance comes from. This guidance is not coming from me for something that I have learned in a physical world. It comes from a different source. Not everybody puts themselves in that kind of position, because let me tell you, there's a lot of drawbacks when it comes to that. You know? Yep. So I have part of my path, if you will, is to learn how to trust myself. Because there will be many, many, many people out there who will just love to drag me down. And they're absolutely there.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And they're constantly reminding me, who do I believe? Who do I believe? Who do I believe? And remember, my big thing was not having any sense of value. Right? And because I have struggled with that and I continue to do so, it is part of my path. It only, quote unquote, makes sense that I would use what I've learned from these experiences and offer it as a way that can help inform others and hopefully help. Right? But we don't have to do it as a job per se. As a matter of fact, I would say probably majority don't. Just because one doesn't work as a healer, quote unquote, does not mean they don't touch lives wherever they go.
Right.
Right? And that's what we need to remember. We don't just give of ourselves when we are working. We give of ourselves as long as we are.
Time.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having an intention towards someone you don't know in order to help them feel safe, whatever it is you giving of yourself. But we don't think of it that way because we do not put value on that.
Right.
Right? That's why it's important to know what your truth is, because knowing your truth tells you what is your value. Right?
Yep. I love that. Okay. So this is a question actually from a former member, but I wanted to include it anyway because I've thought about it, and I feel like her name was Erin. I didn't write it down. And I've thought about her a number of times since I first saw this question. So how do I let go of an extremely traumatic past in order to make room for positive experiences? It still weighs heavily in spite of trying to focus on new adventures.
What I see is the trying to focus is almost like trying to pretend that the past doesn't exist. This is how I see it. So there is quite a bit of resistance to what was and is, because her own words are saying, how do I become detached? Which means she's saying she's holding on to something. So the question here would be for her, if you were to sit down in a deep meditation and ask yourself, what is it exactly that I am holding on to? There would be an answer that would float up. And then your head would kick in. So this is something I do with my clients in sessions. I help them see their truth. I don't tell them what their truth is, because the moment I tell them, it's not their truth. And that is not very empowering. So my hand in this is really like a guide. So to ask a question like that would be very, very powerful and very, very important, I feel. Okay? Because whatever comes to you as whatever you're holding on to, you can look at it almost like a need that's needing to be fulfilled. And as long as you have a need, the need will want to be fulfilled one way or another. But once you understand what the need is, you can realize that you can fulfill a need in various different ways. So it's like a bad habit. The best way that I know of to deal with a habit, or one of the best way I should say, is to replace it with a quote unquote better habit. Right? Because remember, it will need replacing, because as long as it exists, it's a freaking need. Right?
Yep.
So what I hear is acceptance of what happened, but not accepting what happened as something that determines the rest of your life. Okay. So this person is feeling, from what I can observe, like she's held back by what has happened. So her past is limiting her future. So what I see is a possible question from herself to herself, asking herself, by me limiting myself, what am I fulfilling? What need is being fulfilled? Oftentimes is as simple as, well, it's familiar. It's familiar, and therefore it makes it a habit.
Yep. Right?
And I find that when I break it down to these almost like little pieces and make it very almost logical, the mind goes, well, duh. And the moment there is a deeper understanding, it's like something shifts in person's perception. But think about it, it's all about perception. The moment you perceive differently, it starts shifting in terms of the relationship you have with your past. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. I also find and I do this quite often in my sessions, one way to help a person move through what happened in the past is after the acceptance. And by the way, acceptance does not mean that you are agreeing with what has happened or how it went down. No, it means none of those things. What it means is it happened, there's no way around it.
Yeah, you can't change it.
But it doesn't mean that gets to define you for the rest of your life. Now, if there is I don't feel that's the case with this person, but if there is a situation where somebody got physically harmed and as a result of that, they have no arm, then of course it has affected them for the rest of their lives. But still, aside from the physical component, there is the psychological, which was much more powerful than the physical. So as an example, a person with no arm, for example, because it was, let's say, blown off in the war, can choose to live life continually seeing themselves as a victim, or they can choose life feeling empowered and helping others be empowered in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Same end result, different outcome.
Yep.
Or different outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So those two types of people are dealing with exactly the same circumstances, but they're choosing to look at it from a different perspective. So finding value in the past, particularly if it's something traumatic. And I know the mind is going to go, what do you mean value? It's traumatic. What are you talking about? Yes, I'm talking bigger picture. Every single experience in our life, doesn't matter how small, how big, how bad, how good, every single thing that exists serves a purpose. There is absolutely nothing that goes to waste. Therefore, everything, and I mean everything, is of value, including the things that we go, there is no freaking way that's value, even that, because everything is information. There's no such thing as waste information. Information simply is. Right?
Yeah, and you don't always know what it is in the moment. Like,
Yes, of course.
sometimes it takes time. But you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, if you love who you are today, all of your experiences made you who you are today. So they all serve the highest good, right?
Yeah. And when you say love to me is synonymous with acceptance, self-acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Also, I feel that when we, how do I say this? Because I'm seeing it, show me. When we have resistance to letting something go, it's also because we don't want to let go of our old story, because on some level it serves us. If it didn't serve us, we wouldn't do it. Think of it this way. It's an energetic transaction. If on a soul level, the transaction that you are into is not serving you, you wouldn't bother. So it is serving. We need to recognize it as a valuable piece of information. Okay. So the way I work with clients is that I help them trace back to list all their wonderful qualities that are who they are right now. So acknowledging the incredible person that the person is today and asking them the question, how did your past experience help you become this person today? The moment they start connecting the dots, they no longer think of their past as something they need to quote unquote get rid of. Because they connect with it as value. Generally speaking, anything of value, we generally don't reject. Sometimes we do, it's called self-sabotage, but generally we don't. When we have things of value, we tend to what? Keep it, right? So one way she can deal with that is recognize all the wonderful things about who you are, about that person. I mean, write a list of at least 10 points that are you being an incredible person. And if you have a problem with that, ask a friend who you trust. Let them tell you what you're incredible at, because generally we don't see ourselves that way. And then look at all those experiences in the past, the ones you're trying to get rid of. How did they contribute to you being that amazing person? And I am willing to bet 9 out of 10, whatever your amazing person are, you can trace back to how your past have influenced your current situation in terms of who you are.
Yeah.
And with that, it's like your attitude towards it shifts. It still sucks because of what was unpleasant, and very, very unpleasant at various degrees of unpleasantness. But you are choosing, just like the person who lost their arm, you are choosing to make it be your strength. You are taking control and you're saying, at least I'm going to use that to help me. Mm-hmm. Because the moment we try to push something away, that something is in control of us, really. Think about it, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's easier said than done. I absolutely, yes, out front and center. But this person is given power to her past, which means her power is not in the present, which means she's leaking valuable energy. So I just heard, how do I not stay focused on your past? Well, since there is a recognition that there is focus, it's a matter of refocusing one's attention. But we have a bad habit of focusing on things we don't like.
Right, and as you focus more on the past and the traumatic experiences, they just they gain more energy.
Yeah, the more you try to push against something, the more resistance you create.
Yeah, that too. Well, yeah, if you're like trying to deny, you know, like
absolutely.
not deal with, like, I don't want to deal with you, like you're still giving it energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oftentimes you give it way more energy than you want.
Exactly.
So in a roundabout way, it is about shifting one's relationship to whatever they are trying to get rid of. And I will go back and always keep saying, you cannot get rid of energy, period. You might as well just make it a telegram every day you see, I cannot change energy. I cannot get rid of energy. The only thing you can do is transform it. Shift the direction, transform it. Energy cannot be destroyed.
Right.
So.
Well, if you can believe it, I believe we are over the 30-minute mark here. We were trying to keep this to about 30 minutes. So thank you, Joanna.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Wendy. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Yes. All right, guys.